Welcome to State of Politics. I'm David Zhang. Thank you so much for joining us today. There's a lot to get through today. Now, there's been a video circulating online. A man in Beijing put up banners on a bridge overpass to protest the draconian COVID measures in China. He also played a pre-recorded message that says, quote, "Go on strike to remove dictatorial Xi Jinping." Of course, that's the Chinese president and the Chinese General Secretary, the core leader of the Chinese Communist Party. The two white banners he put up are written in red ink, a sign of revolution. This one reads, "We want food, not PCR tests. We want freedom, not lockdowns. We want respect, not lies. We want reform, not a cultural revolution. We want a vote, not a leader. We want to be citizens, not slaves." The second one reads, "Strike to protest dictator traitor Xi Jinping." Now, this happened on the Sitong bridge overpass in the Haidian district of Beijing. Now, this district has all the young professionals working in tech and next generation corporations. And so it's a very populated and concentrated area to do something like this. Soon, the man was arrested, but not before various videos started to circulate on Chinese internet spaces and then on our overseas media platforms like Twitter. Police and firemen showed up on the bridge and they took down the banners, and he, like I said, arrested. But the news already got out. Soon, protesters calling for the protest for the Chinese government started to show up around campuses in various colleges around the world, and some of the posters even popped up in China, right there in Beijing. People in Beijing online, as well as in person, were shocked at the event. Soon, the news spread to Western social media like Twitter, sparking a discussion on how much the extreme COVID measures have impacted Chinese citizens. The Economist Shanghai correspondent Don Weiland described a short chapter in history. Josh Chen, the deputy China bureau chief of the Wall Street Journal, also tweeted and says the guts it took to do this and the ability to pull it off despite suffocating security are both astounding. Now, as we know that to do something like a protest or putting a banner up in China is very hard to do, and the consequences are dire. Republican U.S. Senator Todd Young from Indiana also tweeted, quote, "Inspiring courage by some Chinese citizens speaking truth to power in the heart of Beijing. They will undoubtedly be punished by the authorities, but I pray their acts will encourage more Chinese citizens to fight for a better future than the one imposed on them by the CCP." Now, the reaction is clear, right? The public resentment towards zero COVID in China is culminating, and the new bridge man represents something bigger, like a burning torch igniting the dull and suffocating depression of the Chinese society. As this event is being followed by all the major media around the world, it is like breaking a window into a world, showing us what it is like to live under communism. As onlookers pass by the smoke on the bridge, the man now famously compared to the tank man in 1989 during the June 4th Tiananmen Square massacre, blocking the tanks with his own body, this bridge man is being hailed as the representative of a collective cry for help. The name, hence, the bridge man. Now, this is all exploding both in China and Western social media for a few reasons. First, it has been more than 2 years, 2 years and 9 months since the pandemic was first discovered, became a pandemic. The virus was first discovered in Wuhan, and the Chinese Communist Party still maintains for them that the only way forward in China is to maintain the road of zero COVID. A concept not only defies the nature of science, but is extremely unachievable. The idea is to stamp out COVID to a number zero positive cases. And essentially knowing the cases of COVID we're getting now, Omicron and the fast spread, low mortality rate, less severe, but really infectious variant, it's hard to track everything. But China is doing it. And this idea is being championed by Chinese leader Xi Jinping himself, who by the time you're watching this video is on his way to a third term in power, breaking the precedents that each Chinese Communist Party leader is only able to stay in power for 2 terms. And some speculate that China will return to normal after Xi takes control for another term and he will relax the measures, right? When the 20th Party Congress ends next week, where a new set of leadership roles will be announced and Xi is expected to still stay in power, that he is going to relax these measures. But if Xi stays in power, his primary base for legitimacy has been, in fact, zero COVID. That means going back on a policy that he declared a part of a, quote, people's war will only harm his image and his reputation, especially if the upcoming 20th National People's Congress is about consolidating Xi's grip on power. Communism thrives on stability and control. The fall of the Soviet Union was the biggest lesson for the Chinese Communist Party, and they learned that by giving people the freedom to choose and to think, is pushing people to want to improve their lives. And zero COVID is the perfect tool to establish control where you have police, hospital, and government systems all around the world watching you and realizing that, oh wait, in China, the entire society is doing everything they can for the sake of public health. And then they copied it, but then they realized after a year or so that this wasn't sustainable. But in China, they're doing it onwards. In Western nations, we saw that COVID restrictions were draconian in some ways, but most of the time it was to ease the pain of the pandemic, and they ended as the pandemic went away. But in China, the zero COVID campaign only became stricter and more extreme, carried out nationwide with revolutionary zeal by local officials for the sake of achievements so that they can be promoted and under orders directly from the central government to implement every step of zero COVID. And the policy, once appointed per ride, is now wreaking havoc on the economy and disrupting individual lives. Hence, we're seeing the bridge man. Increasingly unpopular at home, it poses one of the biggest challenges the Chinese leadership has faced since the pandemic began. And that's an outside look. But little has it actually impacted Xi Jinping or even moved him. There is bound to be a breaking point among the people, though. Introducing the bridge man again, people began searching online for the identity of the now coined Sitong bridge man, and it appears that this guy who staged the protest is Peng Life, who is on social media going by the alias named Peng Zhaizhou. And a Twitter user reveals that he is an employee of Beijing Melon Network Technology Company, and he lives in Sitong district in Beijing, and he's 48 years old. He has a daughter going to elementary school. According to his ResearchGate profile, a website dedicated to scholars who have done and written papers, the new tank man is the author of unidirectional propulsion of alternating charges on metal surfaces by electromagnetic wave electric field. Now, it seems like he is either an expert on electromagnetic and physics, or he is somebody that's very enthusiastic about it. Either way, clearly, now anything related to him or Beijing or Sitong Bridge or even bridge, these terms, they've all been censored on the Chinese web. And China's internet Great Firewall is also reaching into chat groups, blogs, and search engines to remove anything associated with this guy on the bridge. And even a Chinese song titled Bridge was also censored. Offline, people in Beijing, the police are becoming bridge guards by urgently deploying bridge watchers at major overpasses. And it seems that they're showing that the communist regime desperately wants to prevent similar incidents from happening again. According to internet sources, there were also job postings that were screened, and the authorities were urgently looking for bridge watchers for a price of $40 a day, and you can get food and lodging. According to the recruitment information, these bridge watchers need to guard the various large and small footbridges in Beijing 24 hours a day, rotating in a group of 2. In addition to the control of various bridges, cloth and paint, which are now regarded as tools of crime by the Chinese Communist Party, and they've also started to enter the control list, meaning that customers who want to buy cloth over a meter long will now have to be required to register with their real names, and they even claim that in some places, they require real name registration to buy paint. Now, this is typical of the way the CCP thinks and acts. As we said, the Chinese Communist Party always goes to the extreme to do things to the extreme. The first step is to watch the overpasses, and the second step is to watch all the tall buildings, because apparently every building can be a place to throw flyers or hang long banners. This is the fate of the Chinese Communist Party. When they block the way for everyone, they will have no way out themselves. Eventually, people will start to think that what was the reason for us to be in this particular place abiding by the zero COVID rules? Meanwhile, the song Warrior of Darkness, which has been blocked inside China, has suddenly become a hit on overseas streaming platforms. The song was originally released as a single by singer Eason Chan in November last year, and it was the theme song of a video game cartoon series called League of Legends. And in April this year, the song was used to promote the lockdown in Shanghai with the subtitle Defeat the Epidemic, meaning that it was pro-Beijing and the pro-lockdown song has been banned. Who would have thought that a song originally dedicated to defeating the pandemic in the Shanghai lockdown would overnight become a political song to protest the lockdown of the city and thus become the #1 target of zero COVID to be banned? The irony. A song worshipping COVID a few months ago is now the dagger held at the throat of the CCP overnight. Now, like I said, in many universities overseas, many international students have begun to print out and post those banners on bulletin boards in New York, Illinois, Chicago, London, and Seoul, Korea. On the surface, the Bridgeman incident seems to be just a stone thrown into the calm water, generating a little bit of waves. But it is strictly difficult to assess the extent of the follow-up effect it will trigger. For example, we have seen rumors that Xi Jinping has been briefed and has asked for a serious investigation into the case. As well, over the weekend, the October 16th date that keeps appearing on posters could be a massive protest or walkout campaign against the regime. Question regarding the Bridgeman's protest: is it just a simple individual who's acting alone, or is it really supported by a team or even somehow a deeper background, as some people claim? Perhaps an underground network of quote-unquote revolutionaries? It is impossible to draw any definitive conclusions on this matter at this point. But one thing is clear: there is an outcry. The Chinese people have lived under the heavy hammer of the COVID rules for too long. With videos like this, a delivery man who has to feed the food through a cup to people locked inside a quarantine zone, to others like this, where you have COVID guards in white garb with rifles. If Xi successfully stays in power for another 5 years, all signs point to the idea that zero COVID will continue. A top pandemic expert from China agrees. Liang Weinan, who formerly led the Chinese National Health Commission's COVID response team, claims in an interview that zero COVID, if undone, will have massive damages. That means the fear the regime is using to justify that the only way going forward is to continue zero COVID. Now, this may just be one man today on the bridge. What we may see next is how the regime will have to deal with thousands more, or perhaps online or underground or silently. How long can it stick to zero COVID before things just boils over? And most of the protesters calling for the strike or the campaign against Xi Jinping, I think it's much bigger than just that. Xi Jinping himself is just the front man of the communist system in China. What needs to fundamentally change is the system itself, the one that drives madmen like Xi Jinping to do things like zero COVID. The communist system needs to be changed and abolished. Thank you so much for watching today's State of Politics, and we covered a lot on the zero COVID issue in China. Let me know what you think in the comment and what you would like to see next. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, and also turn on your notification bell. That way you can see all of our latest videos when it comes out. Thank you so much for watching tonight. I'm David Zhang. Take care.